So a very good afternoon to everyone. A warm welcome to our webinar, Singapore as a Strategic Launchpad, a gateway to ASEAN and China. My name is Benny Neo, the marketing head for InCorp Singapore, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's session. We are excited to bring together industry leaders and experts to explore how Singapore serves as a gateway for businesses looking to expand into ASEAN and China. Today's discussion will cover strategic insights, practical opportunities, and real-world case studies to help you navigate cross-border growth. Let me briefly introduce our distinguished speakers. Mr. KG Tan, CEO of InCorp Global, will kick off with an introduction to InCorp Singapore and share his perspective on Singapore's evolving role in the region. Ms. Chloe Koh, the head of Greater China Desk at InCorp Global, will discuss why Singapore is a strategic hub for global business expansion. Mr. Tyler Huang, co-founder and CEO of Transfong, will highlight Singapore's unique position as a bridge to China. Mr. Lek Kok Hao and Samuel from the China-Singapore Suzhou Industrial Park Development Group will share insights on investing in China through Suzhou Industrial Park. Now, just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any questions for each of the speaker, please submit them during the Q&A session towards the end of the session. We'll leave about 15 minutes for Q&A, question and answer, where our speaker can answer all your questions. If we can't finish your questions, we will consolidate the answers and send you to the registered guests after the session. Lastly, we'll record this session and share the recording with all the participants in due course. We encourage you to engage, ask questions, and make the most of this opportunity to learn from our panel. Without further ado, let's invite Mr. KG Tan to open today's session and introduce InCorp Global. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to our distinguished panel today and our guests. I think it has been a great honor for me. Just a short intro about myself. Let me see whether the slides are moving. Okay. Yeah. A short introduction about myself. I'm KG, CEO of InCorp Global Singapore. I think today's session about Singapore as a gateway to ASEAN and China probably rings a lot of renaissance to the panel as well as to the audience. As far as the panel is concerned, I think this is probably a topic that they are very, very competent, well-equipped and passionate about. I think in terms of the audience, I think this will represents valuable insights for each of our distinguished guests who are looking at regional or even Asia-Pacific expansion. I'm sure you will have queries, issue, challenges, not just on the regulatory aspect, but also on the market aspect of things. So before I introduce my panel to start the presentation going, let me just give me a few minutes of your time to introduce InCorp Global to you. InCorp Global, we are basically a leading corporate service provider in the Asia Pacific. Headquartered in Singapore, currently we have covering nine strategic markets all across ASEAN, China, and Hong Kong. In terms of the headcount size, we probably have about 1,005 people. And the distinguished factor about us is also the fact that we are part of Ascentium, which as of today is 2,500 people strong, covering 23 market jurisdictions. And I'm very happy to share with you guys that probably by the second half of 2026, we will all be rebranded into Ascentium. Now, this coming slide is actually showing you sorry, the previous slides again. A bit. Yeah, this coming slide is actually showing you in a very diagrammatic format on where Ascentium global footprint is. As you can see, InCorp Global traditional core is probably Asia Pacific, but Ascentium has bring in expertise that extend beyond Asia Pacific, currently cover Europe, Middle East, UK, as well as America. On the right-hand side, you probably see the list of very, very diversified services that we are offering. But I think our motto, our aim is the same. We are the corporate service provider that would like to journey with the client as they start from their infancy all the way to established multinational, working with you as you cross over different international footprints. And we make sure that we have the service that is probably the right call for you as you advance your journey with us. The next one will actually give you just a very quick snapshot of just InCorp Global. Previously, I talked about the fact that we are in 9 countries. This is probably where we are in terms of the 9 countries, and we are currently serving more than 20,000 clients and having 1,005 people. Next, please. Yep. This is the whole comprehensive suite of services that we are currently offering just at the InCorp Global level. You can see that from the very traditional corporate secretarial setting up of companies, accounting, tax, we currently even go into risk assurance, audit, taxation in terms of transfer pricing, international tax, ESG, and we are also into payroll, immigration, and recruitment. Last but not least, the recent one that we add to our list of services is actually funds and family offices in terms of trust, fund admin, and private clients. Because of the diversified services that we are offering, you can see that in terms of our clientele, that there's really not one size of clients that we are targeting at. So you can see from here, we cover from startups to the SMEs, all the way to the large corporates and listeds. On top of that, we do have government agencies, non-profit organizations, and fund and family offices as all under our distinguished client list. So I hope the previous slides give you a good introduction of myself as well as InCorp Global and Ascentium. Very excited to next introduce these speakers to you. They are all distinguished individuals in their own field. We have Chloe, again, our head of Greater China Desk. We have Tyler Huang, co-founder CEO of Transfong. Thank you, Tyler. We also have Kok Hao and Samuel. They are the deputy head and manager of China Singapore Suzhou Industrial Park. Thank you so much for your time. So without further ado, let me just pass on to Chloe to start the sessions going. Over to you, Chloe.
Thank you, KG. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Chloe, it's a pleasure to share insights on why Singapore stands out as a strategic hub for business looking to expand into ASEAN and China. In my session today, I will be sharing how Singapore's unique position, business environment, and government supports can help business companies like yours unlock new opportunities across the region. So let's dive into what truly makes Singapore a strategic hub for business in Asia. As we consider where to anchor our regional ambitions, Singapore stands out as a truly strategic hub. But what makes Singapore so attractive for business and investors from around the world? Let's take a closer look at the unique advantages that position Singapore as a gateway to Asia, offering not just access, but also stability, efficiency, and opportunity for growth. Singapore consistently ranked among the top destinations for investment, ease of doing business, and talent attractions. Other than that, Singapore has over 90 double tax agreements and 27 free trade agreements signed. 0% tax rates on capital gains and dividends, and is recognized for protecting intellectual property rights. These advantages make it an ideal base for companies aiming to access major Asian markets efficiently and securely. So, it's easy to get caught up in all these rankings, but honestly, there's a lot more to the story. Singapore isn't just about numbers, it's about the kind of place where business really feels at home. What makes Singapore special? For starters, is stable, open, and super supportive of new ideas. The government here is always pushing for innovation and digital transformations. So companies aren't just keeping up, they are also staying ahead. If you are thinking about setting up shop in Asia, Singapore gives you the confidence that you can grow, adapt, and succeed, no matter how the world changes. So let's talk about something every business cares about, the taxes. Singapore really stands out here. The corporate tax rate at a flat 17%, which is already pretty attractive. But what's even better, the perks for both new and established companies. If you're just starting out, there are startup tax exemption scheme and partial tax exemption scheme that helps lower your tax rate. But that's not all. If your company is investing in R&D or building up in intellectual property, Singapore offers some amazing incentives. Up to 400% tax deduction on qualifying expenses. That means you can put more resources into growing and innovating instead of worrying about taxes. So tax benefits are definitely a big plus, but what makes you get started here? Singapore makes it super straightforward for global talent and entrepreneurs to live and work in here. If you're thinking about relocating, there are a whole menu of options, whether you are a professional, a startup founder, or a tech expert. Singapore got you covered. There's the employment path for professionals, the entry path for entrepreneurs, the one path for top talent, and even the tech path for the tech leaders. So no matter your background, there's a pathway that make it easy for you and your key team members to come in, settle down, and help your business grow. In addition to a welcoming environment for professionals, Singapore environment is serious about supporting business growth. If you are thinking, what kind of help can I get? There are all sorts of programs, from innovation grants to internationalization, incentive, and support for scaling and digitalization. There's always something to help you move forward. With all these programs, you can focus on growing your business and reaching new markets. You can worry less about risk and focus more on growing your business and entering new markets smoothly. If you like to know more about these government support and incentive, feel free to reach out to us or can just visit the official government website for the latest information and updates. So let's dive a little deeper into how these advantages play out in real life with a story that really brings it all together. A European tech company was eager to break into the Chinese market, but as soon as they started planning, they ran into all sorts of challenges: complicated rules, currency restrictions, and some pretty steep taxes. Instead of trying to push through all those obstacles directly, they took a smarter approach. They set up a holding company in Singapore to own their Chinese subsidiaries. So why did they choose Singapore? Singapore has a special tax treaty agreement with China. They were able to reduce the dividend withholding tax from 10% to 5%. This means when profit was sent from China to Singapore, the tax were lower. And there's also no capital gain tax when selling the Chinese entity. On top of that, Singapore make it easy for companies to handle their finance and plan for growth. Another big factor is trust. The country is known for being honest and reliable, which helped them build trust with partners and investors. Hiring bilingual talent was also much easier, so working with teams in China felt smooth and efficient. And finally, since Singapore and China are in the same time zone, day-to-day business was simple, no late night calls or waiting hours for a reply. Everything just flew better. As a result, they saved around 5,000 a year in taxes. Even better, they got their Singapore entity up and running in just 3 days, much faster than they expected. With Singapore as their regional hub, they didn't just enter China, they also scaled up into other ASEAN markets using the same structure and support. This story really shows how strategic planning combined with Singapore business-friendly environment and government incentives can unlock significant value and growth. It's not just about saving money, it's about making your market entry smoother, building credibility, and setting yourself up for long-term success. I hope this gives you a clearer idea of why so many companies choose Singapore as their hub for growing across the region. If you have any question on structural and tax planning, HR matters, or government incentive, feel free to drop your message in the chat box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the speaking sharing. And now I will pass it on to Tyler, co-founder and CEO of Transfong. He will be sharing how we leverage Singapore's strategic bridge to China. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. All right. First, I'd like to thank InCorp
to this event. Great honor to share with everyone. Just know we're already here. It's a very good place to do business for Singapore. But on top of this, I'd like to share quite a few points. And from technology point of view, what Singapore can offer on top of ease of doing business and the traditional financial centers role, right? So here, first, I'd like to let everyone know what we do. We are Singapore lead cross-border tech business accelerator. So we work with tech companies in Singapore and beyond Singapore to build a bridge between Singapore and China to help business to thrive cross-border. And we believe, of course, the less barrier, the better. But now everything getting very challenging. So that's why we really want to help founders and tech business to grow. And for me and my co-founder, we both work in tech sector for quite a few years, both in research institutes as well as industry. So we bring this knowledge and experience, and we work with clients here to make sure they can tap into the best bridge built by, in the past few decades between Singapore and China. As we already know, this red dot Singapore plays a very important role to link Chinese market, Chinese technology, talent, and the global world here via Singapore. And by the way, this is not just one-side traffic. We do see, of course, a lot of Chinese companies coming out via Singapore to the world. On the other hand, we see more and more tech companies, especially next generation of these deep tech companies using Singapore as a very strategic launch point to go into China, right? So we work with government, and as many of you should already know, heard about Suzhou Industry Park. Our good friend from SAP is also here. On top of this, Singapore and China do have several other joint projects from government to government. So we work with those city governments to build this incubating center inside of those cities with this government projects to provide the best support to cross-border business launching from Singapore. So here I'd like to share quite a few information, mostly related to Singapore's technology offering and our ecosystem landscape. I will try to skip quite a few because limited by the time. I'll not touch all the details. And of course, if anyone interested in some of the technical details in a sense, feel free to reach me after this. First of all, we have to have a context, right? Singapore is basically at the core, at the center of ASEAN, and the fast-growing economy is going to be the fourth largest forecast to be in 2030. And the most important, the key things about Singapore is connectivity. So Singapore connecting physically, virtually, and in many aspects, including money, talents, to the region and the world. And this graph, the most important thing, I believe everyone knows Singapore has a strong GDP, but I want to mention here is that 20% of the GDP come from manufacturing, which can be a little surprising to quite a few. Of course, Singapore is a big business center. We have a lot of trading. We have a lot of financial business, but manufacturing, especially high-tech, high value-added manufacturing, counts for 20% of the GDP, which means we have a strong and thriving ecosystem to help tech business to do a lot of things here before you launch into ASEAN or maybe to China, right? And of course, there are a lot of ranking here, but I want to mostly bring to your attention about the ranking of the IP protection across Asia is ranking second globally. And that also means that when you come to Singapore, you can really do research and development with the local institutes, as well as register IP and localize your IP here, which can provide a lot of value and support, especially when you're considering enter Chinese markets. And this is about the GDP growth. Of course, Singapore has different phases of growth. And now we are in a knowledge innovation-driven economy, and the GDP is still growing fast. It's not easy. So Singapore managed to go through those so-called mid-income traps, a lot of traps we managed to go through. How we do that? And there's also a lot of intensive knowledge here, but most importantly that Singapore want to capture the value within the island and still bring some of the value down the supply chain and the value chain to the region, to Southeast Asia, and most importantly to China. That's why we have Suzhou Industry Park in a sense. And now I'm talking about research and development. We are in the IE 2025, which we're focusing on these four sectors, as you can imagine: advanced manufacturing, biotech, health related, and smart nation, IT, and as well as urban solutions and sustainability. So these are the strong areas. If your business in the region, in those different sectors, you may want to consider to make good use of Singapore's resource. And there are some of the more in-depth things. I just pick a few just to bring to your attention. For example, for electronics and electrical, there's a lot of things that happen actually manufacturing here, including I used to work for semiconductor. There are probably about 10% of wafer foundry activities happening inside Singapore. Right? So Singapore is not just a research and development. We also do loads of advanced manufacturing. And because of this foundation, we have very good talents here. If you want to build your regional research and development center in Singapore, you can work with this industry talents very closely. And ICT or AI in general, nowadays we're also looking at a lot of activity here in Singapore, and especially if you look at data center, if you look at the latest driving AI, both government and the private sectors are doing a lot of things here. And biotech is also another very important. Pharmaceutical is one of the important pillar of Singapore's manufacturing. For example, there are quite a few of the top 5 pharma companies globally. 4 of them have their manufacturing site here, not research and development site, manufacturing site. So a lot of medicine you're familiar with actually manufacturing in Singapore. And of course, medtech is another thing. We have loads of new innovation in medtech device, and not just in Singapore, it also linking to the regional supply chain and test bed for those medtech devices. And of course, processing engineering, I will just skip this part, and energy, chemical, including the new energy transition. So Singapore is taking the lead, have a very strong chemical and petrochemical business at the background. At the same time, is transforming into new energy or energy saving solutions along the way. So you can see a lot of things here, right? If you look at the logos, the tech giants are actually building the headquarter here, not just for headquarter business, also to research and development. What's interesting on this graph is that you will see Chinese giants here as well. So if you look at the global landscape, many areas, China play one part. The US or in general, the Western side of the companies, they do their own business. Really in a country, in a region, that both sides can play together in generally quite a fair leveling ground. So in that sense, and Singapore, because of this neutral position, so China's giants and the US giants working here together, of course they compete with each other, but if you look at the talent and mutual learning, they're really working together in a sense to build a better AI solutions for the world. Yeah, there are some regional unicorns and listed company here. I just skipped this part. All right, so that's some of the very important background I want to bring to the attention to the audience here. And I also want to just emphasize a little bit on China, Singapore, the government building. So this is not from yesterday, not from 10 years ago. It's from the very moment China and Singapore build a relationship with each other. So along the way, in the past 30, 35 years, there's a lot of things happening in the different region of China. So what we call this is government-to-government projects. And so they build together, they build these projects. Of course, Singapore, the largest corporates in Singapore, they build the infrastructures. Of course, they make money, but more importantly, they build the bridges for SMEs and smaller size private sector companies to go through those bridges. Some of the business investment model is just to give you some idea, how does this work? So in a very high level, I believe SAP friends, CSSD friends will also share a bit more details on this. So it's really a joint venture. It's not just some concept by government. Singapore will really invest together with the Chinese counterparts to joint venture and develop the industry part and developing the ecosystem in various cities in China, right? And there's a lot of people asking me why Suzhou, the flagship, is always in those so-called normally we consider second-tier city. Why not in Shanghai, Beijing, or Shenzhen, right? Here is the graph. If you look at the GDP in total, right? And Singapore is almost on par with quite a few cities or the second-tier cities in China, but slightly lower than the very big first-tier cities like Shanghai or Beijing. So if you do export of Singapore's know-how, of course, you will find a bit more comparable cities to working together. So if you look at Suzhou, Nanjing, Tianjin, Chongqing, those familiar name with government-to-government projects, they're all following this. But of course, this is just one of the metrics. It's certainly not the determining factor. I just want to bring to you, Singapore, no matter we see how good we are basically just in par of the GDP, on par as the GDP with Chinese second-tier cities, all right? Yeah, so the last part I want to just very quickly run through is Transfong, what we do here in this context to help Singapore tech companies to enter Chinese market. So what we do here is we run acceleration program, and this program we run in multiple cities in China where we operate, and we also try our best to find funding for the companies from both sides of the government, and we also have a local team running there in a daily basis and work with our partners locally to provide the business lead generation, funding and grants, and of course we also arrange business immersion trip. We just back from a big one from last week in Suzhou region, so it was very helpful and very fruitful. And of course, the last part is our landing support. We work with our partners, of course, including CSSD and SAP to provide the best support to help companies to land in China. And in that regard, we also will work with InCorp in China. We call them Yende, so very closely, and with Chloe's team there. So yeah, there are some numbers I just flipped through. We work with, we also do the competitions, and to give the prize to the companies here. We also arrange with some sponsorship program. In this case, it was with Wuxi, and we also arrange the immersion trip, which covers this lead generation, the big companies immersion, and an exchange of idea. And most importantly, we want to help companies to better understand China and what's going on there on the ground. Right. So there are some pictures from the past trips, from very serious meetings, pitching to cultural immersion. So in our region. Okay, we also do a little bit of support with our partners to register companies in China. All right, and with that, we believe a world with less barrier to do business is a more harmonious one. And we practice this. We work with our trusted partners and trying to deliver the promise to come to companies using this route to enter Chinese market. Thank you, everyone. So next, I think we can pass it to CSSD colleagues.
Thank you, Tyler. I'm not sure whether you all can hear me well. Just give me a thumbs up, it's okay. Yep. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Huang, and together with Samuel, my colleague, will share how SIP, Deep Industrial Ecosystem, and 30 years of stable, high-quality governance make it a trusted platform for companies to scale. Just give me a while, I make it full screen. Yeah. Okay. So established in 1994, SIP actually is the flagship China-Singapore G2G project. Right now it's 278 km square of 1.3 million residents, and is recognized as a benchmark for China's reform and international cooperation. So there's a few things that we want to share here. The first thing is actually a national level governance, guided by a joint steering council, co-chaired by China's Vice Premier and also Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister. We ensure clear strategic direction and also coordinated whole of government support. The second thing actually is because of this, we have empowered high certainty environment. So with the central government delegated authority, SIP can independently approve most of these foreign investment projects aligned with national policy. And by that, it also means that we can provide faster entry, predictable rules, and strong certainty for global companies. So next, actually, we want to share is CSSD, our company, Samuel and myself, actually is a government-to-government joint venture that drive the overall master development of SIP with an end-to-end capacity in land development, infrastructure, investment promotion, and long-term operations of the industrial parks that we have. And right now, actually, it's a model that we have also scaled up across the whole East China. So our two other arms of business is we strengthen our industrial base also through targeted capital deployment by doing investments in some of the companies in our ecosystem. Till date, we have invested about RMB 4.7 billion across 49 funds, and we do also 37 direct investments in companies, industries pertaining to semicon, biomedical sciences, robotics, AI, and advanced manufacturing. The other side of it, actually, because of the various industrial parks that we have across China, we also do integrated sustainable utilities and environmental solutions. This will include things like energy systems, water, and wastewater treatment, even things like gas, district cooling, waste management, solar cells, etc. So then, right now, actually, you will ask, what is the purpose of our Singapore office? So there are two key roles that we do. The first thing, actually, we direct FDI, foreign direct investment into China. So from Singapore, we help a lot of these local and global companies land in China. So it's not just Singapore companies, whether it's startups or SMEs, but also global MNCs with their HQ in Singapore to land in China, especially into our Suzhou Industrial Park, which is our flagship project, and also other CSSD managed zones. This will include China entry strategy, park and site selections, regulation, introductions, and integration, more importantly, into the industrial and innovation ecosystems in China. The other part actually is about ODI, our direct investment. So right now, we actually know a lot of these Chinese companies are also expanding into Singapore and to Southeast Asia. What we do is we guide them on local regulations, lending formats, banking, professional services by working with esteemed partners, including InCorp, and also sometimes also with Transfong, to connect them with innovation hubs, industrial estates, and potential commercial partners, like what I've mentioned above. So all in all, the Singapore office acts as a bridge that we enable companies on both sides to access new markets, technologies, and partnerships, but we reduce, more importantly, the uncertainty, and we speed up the time to market. So all in all, we support companies at every stage of their growth. This overview map shows more about the FDI angle towards China. So companies typically move through 3 stages when they enter China market. Across all these stages, we provide strategy, even maybe bread and butter issues like business registration, partner matching, policy navigation, site selection, and beyond that, also post-lending support to de-risk each step and to shorten the time to market. So for stage 1, for instance, we help first-time entrants with market understanding, entry strategy, business license registration, things like regulatory guidance, basic tax and label matters, and early business matching so that companies can have a more clear and predictable start. Stage 2, for companies who are already in China, we support their localization and to scale up, including things like R&D, manufacturing expansion, incentive access, talent and research linkage. And beyond that, once they are more ready, we can also help them find sites within SIP and our other industrial parks. Stage 3 actually is more for more matured companies who are already in China, whether through us or through their own efforts. It's for them to relocate and optimize new opportunities in the area. So they can think about restructuring their operations, so in that, we actually provide comparative park and city analysis, and we assess infrastructure, cost structures that most benefit these companies. And beyond that, there could also be preferential policies to transit to new optimization for these companies. So, earlier, Tyler also shared a bit about Suzhou, but just to give everybody a context, if you haven't been there before, Suzhou is a large and historic talent-rich city. As a city itself, it's about 8,657 km square. Total population is close to 13 million. It's located at the intersection of Yangtze River Economic Belt and also the East Coast Economic Belt. There's 2,500 years of history, and it's the hometown of many top scholars and academicians. The city has long been a center of education, craftsmanship, and more importantly, talent, even in modern times. In terms of living environment, it's highly livable. The city enjoys a very moderate climate, minimal natural disasters, and is consistently ranked among China's most livable urban centers, earning the title Paradise on Earth, or in Chinese we call it 人间天堂. Its quality of life supports companies in attracting and retaining many global talents. And more importantly, as in terms of connectivity, it's exceptional and have very, very good economic strength. So from SIP, if you were to go to Shanghai, it's only 20 minutes by the high-speed railway. If you go to Nanjing, it's only about 60 minutes. So Suzhou, combined with strong manufacturing base and growing innovation ecosystem, it stands out as both a strategic economic hub and also a very livable city, like I mentioned earlier. So this page actually shows Suzhou as a modern, globally connected city. SIP naturally becomes the core engine to power Suzhou's modern economic upgrade and its industrial competitiveness, anchored in strong clusters in industries like electronics, precision engineering, biomedical science, and AI. And a handful of these industries mirror what we have in Singapore, like what Tyler mentioned earlier. It's also China's top development zone. SIP has been ranked China's #1 national economic and technological development zone for 9 consecutive years. It has attracted very high quality industries, Fortune 500 investments, and global R&D centers that form a deep competitive industrial ecosystem, which I'll share more later about Fortune 500 companies' involvement in SIP. SIP is also China's first and only winner of the 2023 UN CTAD Investment Promotion Award, reflecting its world-class governance and pro-business environment. So long-term investors like Panasonic, they have also grown from a single plant to very multiple entities in SIP, demonstrating sustained upgrading rather than one-off projects by these big MNCs. So over here, you will take maybe a short look at the 2 quotes from SM Lee and also the minister in charge of SIP, Minister Chan Chun Sing. So they mentioned SIP is a proven growth engine. SIP's GDP, in fact, grew 10 times in 20 years, from RMB 40 billion back in 2003 to the current RMB 400 billion in 2023. At the 30th anniversary, Assembly called SIP a successful, high-quality, future-oriented industrial park. On the other hand, Minister Chan mentioned SIP as a predictable, open, and trusted industrial park. In fact, a beacon in the connection with the world. So Minister Chan noted SIP is more relevant than ever right now, that offers predictability, openness, and international standards that global investors will look for in China. SIP sits at the frontier of reform and innovation with pilot policies, strong R&D platforms, talent pipelines, and future-ready industrial space for next-generation industries. So I'll go on to the next part about SIP ecosystem. Over here, you will see 3 digits, 2, 4, and 1. So Suzhou Industrial Park anchors one of the most internationalized economies in China. It has 5,100 foreign invested enterprises, nearly 50% from Europe and North America, and over US $40 billion in utilized foreign capital. This gives SIP the resilience and scale to drive the new 10-year Singapore-China footprint for high-quality development. So over here, when we say 2, 4, and 1, 2 refers to the pillar industries, which is electronics, information, and also machine manufacturing. Just these 2 pillars, they take up about US $60 billion in terms of the industries. And then they are reinforced by fast-growing clusters in biopharma, big health, nanotech, new materials, AI, new energy, and green industries. They form one of China's most advanced and future industrial systems. To mention a bit more about the biopharma industries, we have close to 2,000 plus biopharma companies, 300 plus of them MNCs, 800 over medical tech companies. And they also has national platforms like the NCTIB, which is SIP's top life science hub. Further to that, you guys will have read the news also that Temasek recently also have an investment in Suzhou Industrial Park. It's called the BioSpark project. In Chinese, it's called 生命科学园. So it's a Temasek SIP flagship project co-located with Suzhou Laboratory at Sangtian Science Island. The phase 1 will probably complete by end 2026, creating new national level base for next generation therapeutics, medical device, and also AI-driven healthcare innovation. So over here, you will take a look at this map. We have close to 108 Fortune 500 companies, 189 projects. There's strong representation from US, Europe, Japan, and Korea. These include companies like Microsoft, GE, Honeywell, Bosch and Philips, they are from Europe, Samsung and Panasonic from Korea, Japan, L'Oreal, Nestle from Europe. Their presence underscores SIP's ability to support large-scale R&D, high-end manufacturing, and full value chain operations. So while MNCs lend, they keep expanding. This is a defining feature of SIP, continuous reinvestment. So for these companies, they have grown from single entities into multiple entities. So this, I can also share this through an illustration of Bosch. Bosch till date has done a very long-term commitment in SIP over 25 years. They culminate in close to RMB 10 billion, US $1.4 billion upgrades. It highlights SIP's ability to have long-term full chain valuation, innovation, and repeated investments across diagnostic, optics, biopharma. Next, we talk about SIP's top talent pool in the East Coast of China. SIP is ranked #1 nationwide for total talent among all national development zones. It draws close to 200 over universities, institutes within 200 km, and providing companies with a very strong supply of engineers, scientists, industry-ready graduates. It also has a very dense research ecosystem. It hosts about 46 technical institutes, including 15 of them, which is under the China Academy of Sciences, led by also Suzhou Institute of Nanotech and Nanobionics, a national leader in nanotech, new materials, and microelectronics. There's also world-class international platforms, including things like Oxford. They have their first overseas research center in China. And you guys might be familiar also with A-Star, Singapore's A-Star. They have a partner center and it's their first overseas office outside of Singapore. And US, they also have their research institute and their first overseas campus out of Singapore in Suzhou. And they also run the Singapore-China Innovation Center and Block 71 in Suzhou Industrial Park. These institutions I believe, provide world-class research, talent development, commercialization pathways, making SIP one of the most prestigious connected innovation hubs. So over here, you will take a look at the profile of companies that we have helped landed in SIP between 2019 and 2025. You will see a steady wave of companies, especially in biomedical science, medtech, advanced manufacturing, and increasingly in recent years, AI and robotics. This reflects the strong synergy between Singapore's innovation strengths, which Tyler have mentioned, and also SIP's industrial upgrade agenda. So for biomedical science and medtech, you will see there's more than a dozen over Singapore health tech players, including like Lucent, BioChita, Vivo Surgical. They are drawn by the NMPA pathways that we can provide, and also the top hospital networks, mature CDMO ecosystem that accelerate their clinical validation, product registration, and scale up. And for growing presence in AI and robotics, we have companies like Pioneer Innovations, CoolLogix, MedWorks, CN Tech. They're tapping into SIP's deep supply chain and strong industrial demand and rapid automation growth. Their presence strengthens SIP position as a regional hub for smart manufacturing, embodied AI, and next-generation industrial technologies. So in the subsequent 2 slides, I'll just share with you some exciting new developments in SIP. One area is on embodied AI. The other will be on elder care. So SIP is also rising as China's National Center for Embodied AI. It leverages its strength in AI, semicon, and advanced manufacturing. The China-Singapore Embodied AI Industrial Park is launched in February this year. It anchors as a bilateral platform for R&D, pilot testing, commercialization, and advanced manufacturing. SIP is also building a complete robotics supply chain across 5 core components: reducers, servos, controllers, sensors, and end effectors, enabling rapid deployment across automotive, semicon, healthcare, logistics, and industrial automation. These few sectors which is already strong in. By 2027, it has also set very clear target to aim for RMB 15 billion in core robotics output and 10 breakthrough technologies, maybe using 10 benchmark scenarios, positioning SIP as one of the most important hubs for AI and robotics, scaling, and market entry. On the other hand, SIP is also aligning itself for a push into the silver economy, creating a full ecosystem for elder care, rehab, and also healthy aging. In 2024, SIP set up the SIP Senior Wellness Industrial Development Company to lead this sector development. So 2 things to that. First, there will be a smart medical wellness integration with a focus on Singapore collaboration. SIP is moving decisively into smart elder care, including rehab robots, remote monitoring, smart nursing, and also digital health. It is co-developing solutions with Singapore partners for 2 flagships. The first actually is a Silver Economy Experience Center. The other is a Silver Economy Lab. So basically, these 2 setups is to use as a test bed for products, models, and cross-border pilots. And it proves to be something quite important, especially for Singapore companies looking to land in SIP and to have deployment or pilot scenarios. For that, senior and elder care economy, SIP has also set a target by 2027 to build 60 over smart elder care facilities and multiple demonstration parks, forming China's leading ecosystem for healthy aging, long-term care innovation, and silver tech adoption. This positions SIP as a national hub for healthy aging and a key landing platform for global silver tech companies. Next, just pass on the mic over to my colleague Samuel, who will share more about our International Business Cooperation Center and some of the additional support that we can give to companies, whether going into China or other industrial parks, and also towards ASEAN.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Here, I would like to give a bit of a perspective of what Kok Hao has shared just now. Why do we mention about the MNCs, the universities, the research institutions that we have in SIP? The reason being, we want to allow investors, companies to understand that over there are talents, there are hires, there are employees that you can find with international experience, right? Companies, people that work in international companies. Why is that important? As we know, expansion into another country itself is not easy. SIP has moved beyond just land prices. It has moved into helping companies, or rather creating a healthy ecosystem for companies to potentially reduce their operation difficulties, communication difficulties with local hires. Now, and then another thing that you can realize through his presentation was that the ecosystem, the policies in SIP is highly correlated or related to the industries that Singapore is pushing, right? Or the main industries in Singapore. So companies that find a good market here in Singapore can probably also find the similar kind of market that in SIP. And more than that, CSSD has set up an International Business Cooperation Center in Singapore, One North area. So for companies wanting to invest in China, in SIP especially, you know where to look for us, right? And then this center also serves as a landing pad or jumping board for companies from China coming to Singapore and then expand outwards into ASEAN countries. So over here, you can make a lot of friends, a lot of partners from Singapore as well as from China. So this is one of the initiatives that CSSD has taken to help companies to go both ways, from Singapore to China and also from China to Singapore. Here, I would like to give examples for companies, investors to know and understand what kind of policies SIP has taken the frontier in. And basically, we have taken policies to help to reduce that kind of operation frictions. For example, a company establishing a subsidiary in China, they have to be physically in China, for example, right, to do their business registration, to do the authentication. However, in SIP, it has gone beyond that. Online authentication is possible in our office, right? And there's much less complicated paperwork. Registration can be very fast. You just have to be in Singapore. You can get it done already. So this is just one of the examples SIP has taken and helping enterprises, companies to reduce this friction and allow the customer experience to be smooth. Next one, this one is a ODI process. In SIP, there's an expedited ODI process. For every company in China, they want to legally invest elsewhere. For example, if let's say they want to do an MA, they want to set up a company in Singapore, or rather they want to apply for their capital to go out of China to purchase a land, for example, they have to apply for this ODI process, ODI application, right? But however, you might have heard that companies have gone through maybe 6 months or even to a year for this application to be approved before their capital can be legally transferred out of China to invest elsewhere, right? Whereas in SIP, this process has been expedited. The application can get its approval within 7 working days with complete documentation. This is much faster. SIP boasts itself to be the most efficient ODI application platform. So why do we want to mention about this? We want to show investors, we want to signal to companies that SIP is pro-business, right? In terms of attracting businesses from Singapore and from elsewhere in the world to China, to SIP, and also for companies in SIP to go regional, to go international, right? Apart from SIP, CSSD has also developed some other townships, one in Yinchuan, that is in the northwest of China, and 4 other in Suzhou, in Jiashan, in Changshu, and in Nantong, right? Much like Singapore, Singapore has gone through a series of industrial transformation. We have gone from the capital-intensive industries to the more R&D, biomedical kind of industry, or aerospace kind of industry, right? Similarly, in SIP, there is also such a transformation. Throughout the past 30 years, CSSD has brought many companies, MNCs from Singapore into SIP, right? And then these companies has a place to go as the entire region is going through a transformation. So as CSSD has developed, for example, Suzhou, Nantong, over there you can see familiar Singapore champions, like for example, Dawi, Sunningdale, Meizhengxiang, Unisteel. They have gone to other industrial parks developed by CSSD to continue their business in China. For companies in Singapore currently, they have not yet gone to China. If let's say you are in biomedical, if let's say you are in robotics, if let's say you're in silver economy, if let's say you are in electronic engineering, right? SIP is the place that you can go. If let's say, for example, you are in automobile, there is the Changshu Industrial Park developed by CSSD that is congregated with many automobile MNCs like Hyundai and so on. They are located over there. So it really depends on the supply chain in your industry. There are different options developed by CSSD that you can venture into, and you know that you'll be well taken care of. Apart from that, CSSD itself, our Singapore office are also partnering with many of our familiar companies, like for example, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, we have our respective partners that we work with. Why do we work with them? We are working with them to help companies that have landed in Singapore or companies that are in Singapore to expand outwards, especially into the ASEAN region. So these are the few countries that we have touched base with, that we have also strong partnerships. So companies, after landing in Singapore as a gateway, you might be considering into expanding into Malaysia, for example, for the semiconductors industries, data centers. Let's say you are in other kind of manufacturing, you might be going to Vietnam, you might be going to Thailand. If let's say you're in shipbuilding, aerospace, you might be going to Indonesia. These are the places that we can bring you to, and we will be very happy to do that. So because of time constraint, thank you very much. Next, I will pass the time on back to Benny.
Yes, thank you so much, Samuel. So if you guys have questions for the speaker, please start posting your questions in the Zoom Q&A section. We will answer them now. So while you guys are posting, there's some questions already sent in. I'll start. First, for the CSSD team, does CSSD support a biotech startup at research and clinical trial stage to enter China? Question by Mr. Kao. Hi.
I'll take this question, Mr. Kao. So first thing is we have to understand a bit more about this company, what is looking for into going into China. I mean, for us, we do cover a wide range of companies at different stages. Is this company looking at VC funds? Is it looking for grants? Or is it looking to maybe set up something already in SIP so that it can be closer to some of the networks over there? We can actually address this maybe with catch up with yourself to understand a bit better, because I think there's a bit of time constraints. Yeah, but we will be able to support that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Benny. Okay, so for mid-sized company entering into ASEAN and China regarding the function role, right? So everybody knows actually in terms of the cost and living cost and everything, Singapore is on the high side. So when you think about the role function distribution, I think you should put those regional role in Singapore. For example, finance and treasury, legal role, HR talent acquisition, and strategy planning role. And for those lower cost or client-facing role, you can actually put them in China or ASEAN subsidiaries. And you can also think about to use Singapore as a holding company to hold your IP rights in Singapore, because Singapore is ranked as number 4 in the intellectual right regulations. And for the technology integration, you can actually implement the ERP and HR system, as well as the data analysis reporting in Singapore, because of the Singapore laws and regulation regarding the data protection, everything. And for the governance models, the regional leader team can be also based in Singapore. But in terms of the reporting structure, it can be the country managers from the subsidiaries in China and ASEAN reporting to the Singapore HQ. So in this way of the function and role allocation, it can help you to achieve the cost efficiency, tax optimization, and scalability.
Okay, thanks, Chloe. Sorry, just now my mic was mute. So Chloe was answering the question, how should a mid-sized company structure its Singapore headquarters to manage both ASEAN and China operations efficiently without duplicating functions across markets? All right, one more question from the audience. What are some of the current companies that Mr. Kok Hao and team are engaging to go into China? How can I answer that question?
Okay, thanks for the question from the audience. I think I wouldn't go into specific of the names because there are companies that are still engaging at the moment. But from a strategic point of view, most companies are going into China for some of them. Okay, then obviously in the areas of robotics and AI, a lot of these companies maybe get their hardware in China. So it makes sense for them to park some of their business ops all the way in China to do that. We are in touch with also some companies who are exploring even dual approach. On one hand, they are going into America. They are also going into China at the same time. So it could be areas in biomedical science, robotics, AI. So just to name a few. Obviously, there's also some companies who are looking to do ODI, like what my colleagues mentioned earlier. Samuel was sharing also about the our direct investment channel in SIP. So there are companies who do set up their business entity in SIP, even though they are a China company. They set up in SIP, then using the our direct investment channel, they land something in Singapore and in the regional market. So I just briefly share this with the audience. But of course, if you guys like to know more, feel free to reach out to us, because over a webinar session like that, it's harder for us to answer the details of the question like that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Koo Hao. So yeah, we will provide an email with their contacts later, so you can reach out to the individual speaker if you have further questions. So now for the next question for Tyler, Transfong. For companies looking to enter China with a new technology or IP, what practical steps can we take to protect innovation while still collaborating with Chinese partners or manufacturer?
Thanks for the question. Thanks for the audience. It's a very interesting question. As I mentioned earlier, I want to answer the first part, right? We encourage you to consider Singapore as your IP center, to localize the IP in Singapore using the Launchpad to go to China. So you can have third party or more on neutral ground to better protect your IP in that sense. And you make the decision what IP you want to joint venture, what IP you want to transfer to China, and based on your business needs. But on top of this, I also want to add in a little bit a point the why go to China. Because my friend here, they mentioned about there are various reasons why people want to go to China now. What we observe here is that it's a very interesting and clear needs for relatively smaller size. Those are not typical MNCs, right? Why they want to use Singapore to go to China? One thing they mentioned, to tap into, to continue make good connections or manufacture their hardware inside China. And on the other hand, they also want to get to know the latest development of the Chinese innovation. If you look at AI, you look at robotics, you look at those areas, China in many cases is actually the top innovator in the world. It's very, very dangerous if you stay away from China, close your eyes, as if it doesn't happen, nothing happened there. It will be very dangerous for tech innovators outside of China. So they want to know there what's going on. They can have a supply chain manager there. They can have a small research and development team inside China to become their eyes and antenna to understand the Chinese technology innovation there. So for many aspects, more and more needs for smaller size company to set up their offices. They are fully owned entities in China. And in these cases, Shanghai, Beijing may not be the best option. In our view, I believe CSSD friends will also agree, second tier city with strong linkage between Singapore and China, for example, Suzhou, can be actually your first choice. Right, so just to add on this part, on the why go to China as well. Okay.
Thank you, Tyler. Another question for CSSD, maybe Samuel can answer this question. What are the functions of CSSD IBCC team going to be in the Johor SEZ?
Thank you very much for the question. To answer the question in the most straightforward way, yes, CSSD IBCC is going to Johor rather into the whole of Malaysia. But of course, Johor is a much nearer place. We do see a lot of companies, our clients, after coming to Singapore, they are expanding into Malaysia. They're their first two destinations after Singapore. So yes, we are going there. What can we help with? A lot of companies after landing in Singapore, they might be looking at, for example, a factory. They might be looking at, for example, a land, or rather a suitable land near to the supply chain, near to the ports, with good electricity supply, with good water supply. These are the areas that CSSD is helping with. Companies are going into Johor and also going to Malaysia. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Samuel. I guess there's no more questions. Thank you for all your questions that you have sent in. If we are unable to address everyone during today's session because of time constraint, rest assured that we'll do a follow-up email containing a survey and also the contacts for each speaker. So feel free to submit your remaining inquiries in the survey form provided after this session. We hope you found today's webinar informative and engaging. To stay updated on the future events from InCorp Singapore and the Centum Group. Kindly subscribe to our channels and follow us on social media. We appreciate your participation in today's webinar, and we look forward to welcoming you again to our upcoming session. Look out for our emails following up after this webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye. Thanks all the speakers as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.